Well, hello, this is Jason T. Ingram, and I'm coming to you from the Portland, Oregon area. I'm doing a series right now called Referral Madness, and it's about advocating for yourself, finding help, and if there's ever been a worse time to find help, it's during a time when our health care is literally falling apart. I'm on Medicare, and believe it or not, it's so limiting what you can get on Medicare. There really is a form of discrimination if you're on Medicare and you have to live on disability. And so finding extra help, and even a regular therapist, is virtually impossible unless you are able to find extra help from different agencies, government, nonprofit, whatever. So there's just a lot of different groups you can go to, but what happens when you go to every single one of them and they all refer you to other people? It's what I call the endless cycle of referrals. So that's why Referral Madness is something that reminds me of what it's like to spend all this time with all these different people and have very little to show for it. And the problem is, I'm the one that's needing help, and the folks I'm going to for help often are getting paid to do it. Or even if they're volunteering, though, it's kind of interesting because sometimes they think they're helping and they send somebody somewhere and they don't get help. And then unless somebody holds these different organizations accountable, then they'll never know that there's a lot of people that just kind of disappear and fade into obscurity, and we'll never know what happens until people like me get on the news. And we typically don't get on the news because we do something wonderful. It's usually something that's related to our symptoms, and when we're symptomatic, people can interpret those however they want to based on whatever it is. So I'm scared. I'm really scared of living in a world like this, and it's very hard. And I'm also very fortunate the fact that I'm a white male landowner, and so I have a lot of privilege. And so even with my privileges that I have, I'm still amazed at how very little help there is out there, and there are plenty of people that want to give you advice about what they think you could do or what they think your problem is and your solution is, and it makes them feel good and they think they've helped somebody, and a lot of times they do, because sometimes that's all that a peer needs, is to find out how to take care of themselves. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing my little self-care of the day, and I haven't taken my walks for a day or two now, but I do at least an hour of self-care a day, and it usually includes taking a walk out in some area like this, which is close to my house, and I love it. And then I also do qigong or some other type of meditation with that, maybe some reading, but I haven't been able to read lately very much. I did read a little bit today, and that felt really good because my mind has been such a mess lately that it's so hard to focus on reading, and then I get so frustrated because, it sort of builds on it. So the frustration I feel of not being able to comprehend what I'm reading, and then that makes it harder to read, and then before you know it, I'm throwing the book across the room and frustrated, and then of course that leads to, if someone's in a depression, then that makes it really hard to feel good about yourself. And another thing too is that mentally ill people are often susceptible to cults and cultic relationships and organizations, and as a result of healing from serving those types of people, that it really is hard to recover from having all that low self-esteem as a result of living in somebody else's system that works for them. So when somebody is serving some kind of cultish relationship or leader or whatever, I'm being addicted to a system or an ideology or an agenda that suits them and not me. But when it's gone, how do I survive? How do I live? How do I take care of myself? And I also, am going to think, is it the end of the world too? Because all those thoughts that I heard over and over and over again, that if I don't follow this way, that it's going to affect my afterlife. And I have to live with that stuff and try to heal from it the best I can. And it's hard. And so knowing that about why it's so hard for me to do a lot of simple tasks, and how depression is something that's really hard to live with when it's really severe. Because when it's like hyper severe, a lot of people don't understand when they lose the will to do anything, and when they lose the pleasure and the motivation. And unless you've lived with it and experienced it, then yeah, you know that. So right now, I'm just been getting off the phone with a good friend of mine, getting all the support I can right now, because sometimes that's all the support that's available. And there's been a lot of times in my life where I've had like no friends at all. And so the small group of friends that I have now, and I get at least some kind of support every day or two, which is awesome. I typically don't have that. So they agreed to drive me to the hospital in a couple days, and we set an appointment for it. And so I'm really jazzed, and I'm really scared too, because it's been so long since I've been hospitalized. And one of the things I'm scared of is that I always seem to get around some staff members. They're not all this way, but occasionally you get around some that are just hardened, and they've listened to liars, in their job all the time. And so they just get hardened, and they start treating everybody the same, as if they come in there to deceive and lie to people and lie about themselves and try to sneak shit in there. And I'm just the kind of person that exhibits a lot of personality types and behaviors of somebody that would do shit like that. And so I get around these very judgmental workers, and if I try to talk to them, then I end up getting hurt worse if I try to defend myself when they make these judgments. So I don't know how I'd handle that, and I really hope that I don't have to deal with that stuff in the hospital. And I'm going to call again and find out about what I can bring. I got some good advice from my friend about, making sure I bring in my pill bottles, because I have my 7-day pill thing, but I'm sure they need them in the bottles with the name and prescription numbers and all that kind of stuff on there. So, and I haven't been off of weed since October, so that's another thing I'm worried about too, is that I just have been able to get off of it for 24, 48 hours at a time, but then after that I start craving it. So I've built up some kind of dependence on it, whether it's emotional, probably not necessarily a chemical thing. But having been approved for a medical marijuana card for the last 4 years, it's definitely helped me to not necessarily cure anxiety attacks, but to postpone them so I could keep being productive at my work. Because once I start having panic attacks, I'm pretty much finished for the rest of the day. And if that's happening every time I try to work, then what happens is that I don't do anything. And so cannabis has enabled me to do a lot more and be more productive and more creative and be in social places better. And it's also probably done some harm, and I want to learn about it. And it's hard because when I learn about the harm of cannabis from especially a religious hospital, then we not only have their culture, their religion, and we have the drug companies and all that stuff. So I get two extremes when it comes to cannabis. And it's really hard to find people that have a moderate view. And so that's another thing that I'm not going to lie about it. because there's no reason. This is my care. This is my life. Why should I lie about it? And I don't feel like I'd have to lie just to get good care. And if they don't agree with me and they're going to refuse me care, that's hard. I've had that happen with my last provider, and I felt like I was refused adequate care, and there was a lot of disagreements in addition to that. And overall, based on the way I was treated with these last folks, I'm just scared of doctors and hospitals, and I've never been that afraid of them before. So this is really hard for me. And I had to wait months, and that's another story too. I think I've talked about that in other episodes of this. But yeah, I'm glad I'm doing this series, and I'm doing it in a time where right now in my life, and this is sad, I'm a 43-year-old guy, debt-free, and I have income and a house and a car paid for, and yet I come home and just crippled with depression and lots of other mental and emotional and even physical disorders that makes life not worth living, and it makes it hard for me even just to take care of myself. And on top of that, it's hard feeling helpless and feeling alone and lonely, even though I get out sometimes and I have friends, and I'm not on really bad terms with my family, and I'm glad they still love me and they care about me. But yeah, I am admitting that, yep, a guy my age and my life experience and ending up in a place where I allowed my illness to go way worse than it usually is, and I became helpless and afraid. And what's the other one I'm thinking of too? Because this is really hard stuff to admit, because I have a background teaching, classes on mental health and doing some stuff that I'm really proud of. And so it's no fun to lose your mind, and you lose your reputation, you lose a lot of your friends, you lose your work, you lose the ability to do just about anything when you lose your mind. And I'm grateful that I did find my purpose in life, and in some ways I wish I found somebody else's purpose, because I was serving a religion for 20 years of my life. That was my purpose. And now I've had to find one of my own, and I'm glad, because it was the one I've known since I was 5 years old. No brainer. But I found out that I couldn't convince that to anybody. Maybe one, maybe two people can see a little bit about what I have inside of me, and that's what makes life worth living, knowing the hope of that. And the more I ask for help, and the more I suffer the rejection and the silence and the isolation of folks who just don't know what to do with me, and I don't blame them in some ways. In some ways, I think they could have given me more of a chance. It's kind of the nature of the beast. It makes it harder when I'm public about my disabilities and I suffer rejection, and I don't know, why. It could be that, and it could not be, but at least they know. And that's good, because it's breaking down the stigma, and it's making my life a part of activism as well. And if anything, it helps me, and it gives me hope, knowing that just living my life honestly with people about who I am, about my sexual orientation, and about all this stuff, it's wonderful to not have any secrets, because secrets bind you, and a lot of men have a lot of these secrets in their life, and for whatever reason they're just afraid. They don't feel safe to share them, because they share a little bit and they feel punished, or for whatever reason manipulated, overpowered. And there's a lot going on inside of a lot of guys that they don't feel safe to share. And so I really love putting this video out there and being able to speak freely and to challenge other people that might be going through a lot of the same stuff that I am. So wish me luck, and I hope I have a good 5 to 9 days or however long I survive. So thanks.